I grew up in Kentucky. I had a lot of free time, so I watched a lot of Japanese movies, long Japanese movies like Seven Samurai. Over time, I developed an interest in Japan just from movies. One of the other movies that I saw, like a semi-modern Japan, was The Bad News Bears Go to Japan. That was really intriguing, so I was like, wow, I want to go there, that seems cool. Later, I got more and more into Godzilla stuff. My uncle introduced me to Godzilla in the mid-80s. When I was in high school, I was introduced to anime, and Dragon Ball Z was probably my life during the last 2 years of high school. Through Dragon Ball, Godzilla, samurai movies, and eventually toys, I became much more interested in Japan. My name is Jeremy Scott Mwani, and I have been a toy collector, an artist, designer, teacher, many hats, dad, for the last 20 or so years. My first trip here was in 2003, and that was with some pen pal friends that I had made. And I came back to the US, and all I could think about was wanting to go back to Japan. So one of my friends actually convinced me to join the army. I joined the army thinking I could get stationed somewhere in South Korea along the DMZ and be able to visit here more often. I was so fucking stupid, but made it through most of basic training. Then I injured my back because I have a horrible back. So I was discharged, honorably discharged, and decided to go back to school. Long story short, I ended up meeting another Japanese girl, and she came to visit me in the US, and she happened to have a friend whose mother was working at a Japanese manga studio and was looking to hire foreigners as potential apprentices or assistants. So at that time I had been studying art and design and mainly wanted to learn how to do manga. So this was an opportunity for me to not have to return to school and instead get paid to learn how to draw manga. So that's how I ended up here living and working, was landing a gig working for Tetsuo Hara, the creator of Fist of the North Star, and living here ever since. When I started, I was still like pretty much an amateur artist at that time, and I hadn't really used any of the traditional tools that a traditional Japanese manga artist would use, the different nibs and pens and the ink. And I had done some of that in art school, but it wasn't a focus. And back then, there wasn't a whole lot of information about like manga and how it was made. This is late 90s, going into the early 2000s. So I had to learn all that from scratch. So my first job was to learn how to draw lines properly. So I would sit there and just draw lines and lines and lines and lines, you know, the hatching until I had lines that looked of professional quality. And I did this for weeks. So then I was tasked with doing some little touch-ups and line work on panels, including drawing the panel lines around each of the panels. That was way more difficult than I expected, and I messed up most of the lines that I drew the first time around, and they had to be corrected by one of the other staff members. So eventually I ended up becoming one of their lead digital artists, and that way I couldn't mess anything up. So yeah, my main job was doing digital coloring and shading special effects on the final product for Fist of the Blue Sky, which was a prequel to the original Fist of the North Star. I can remember toys that I used to have as some of my earliest memories. So I would say my earliest memories are of owning He-Man, specific He-Man that my aunt gave me, a Bumblebee, original transformable Bumblebee, and then a Kenner Superpowers Superman that I stole from my neighbor and later returned. But yeah, ever since then, I've had like a passion for toys. So when I became a little bit older, I got really into the real Ghostbusters and Ninja Turtles, and I had quite a large collection of both of those, and I still collect those to this day. But yeah, never really stopped. There was a period where I got more interested in sports and other things, and then in 1993 when Jurassic Park came out, that reignited my love of toys, and I started collecting Jurassic Park toys, and I still do to this day. Then I became a teenager, moved away from toys, and then the Star Wars movies got re-released in the theaters, and I started collecting Star Wars toys. So yeah, I don't think I've ever really stopped collecting toys. Everything else I still collect. I had always loved Godzilla since I discovered him through my uncle in mid-80s, but I didn't really have any Godzilla toys. So in high school, I was really big on collecting Dragon Ball Z stuff. But when I moved here, the very first thing that I wanted to try to find were Godzilla toys, specifically the ones that I'd seen in movies, specifically Godzilla vs. Hedorah, where you see the boy holding Amara-san and Bullmark Godzilla. So I didn't know how expensive those were going to be, but unfortunately I wasn't going to be able to afford those, but I would find like the little miniature ones. So I started collecting any cheap retro style Godzilla stuff that I could get my hands on. Then I started coming across more of the Dragon Ball stuff that I didn't own. So yeah, it all kind of started with Dragon Ball and Godzilla toys once I moved here, but it's since then evolved into collecting lots of other things like Microman, various other tokusatsu franchises like Ultraman and Kamen Rider. I love some of the more obscure stuff. One of my favorite things is Sukeban Deka, so I have a lot of Sukeban Deka stuff now. Recently got into Transformers thanks to my son and some friends. So yeah, it's just never-ending toy collecting as far as the eye can see. So I would say like I've found most of my grails at this point. I've been living here for 20 years and I believe I've owned pretty much every single grail that I've been after. So I've slowed down a lot and I prefer just like getting out, relaxing, and just junk hunting, digging through junk bins, finding things that I may not know what they are and going home and learning about that item, or maybe trying to complete some of the collections that I have, but I'm not out to like complete the collections. If I happen to find something that I'm like, hey, I need this, I'll grab it, but I'm not too hyper-focused these days. This was actually a junk bag find. You don't find them much anymore, but I used to go to like secondhand shops and they'd have big bags of toys, just like junk that they want to get rid of for $5 a piece, 500 yen. And this was in a bag of other toys for 500 yen. This is early mid 70s Microman Auto Buggy, although they spelled it wrong, Auto Baggy. I kind of go through phases. I think a lot of collectors go through phases where I buy a lot of something and then maybe I sell off the excess, keep the ones I love the most, and then that way I learn while I'm collecting. That's kind of the best way, in my opinion, to collect, is to learn as you go or focus on the things that you're passionate about. But I like to do both. In the last few years, space has become a big issue because I have amassed so much stuff. In Japan, a lot of the rooms and housing spaces are much smaller than you would typically see in Western culture. I'm fortunate enough to have a large space, but compared to the spaces I would have back home, it's still fairly limited. And I also share the house with my family and their toys, so I have to kind of keep things in this room, and then it all kind of floods over to the next room where it's not really displayed for, you know, any aesthetic purposes. It's all just kind of piled up. And as you can see behind me, like I've got a whole showcase of stuff where I have nowhere to put it, so I just kind of add to the pile, and you know, I'm like, oh, one day I'll just organize it all. And recently I've been home a lot, so I'm hoping I can organize it, but the main thing is the space. So I try to treat the collection kind of like a bonsai tree. You know, you do a little trim here, a little trim here, get rid of the excess, and then try to make it look more beautiful, but keep it within the same space. That's kind of the philosophy I'm going with. But I've got a lot of work to do, and I think now I have a little bit more time to try to sort that out. I don't own a lot of test shots or anything like that, but here's one that I do have. This is a test shot of early 90s Cell from Dragon Ball Z. And then here you can see the final product. So if you were to ask me like what's my favorite toy or what toy means the most to me, I have favorites depending on what mood I'm in and, you know, what I'm into at the time. So I have favorites for each like type of thing that I collect. But I think personally, the toy that means the most to me is this guy right here. the Psycho Gorman soft vinyl toy that I helped produce through RX Nemesis. And the reason it means so much to me is that this is one of my favorite movies of all time. It combines like dark slapstick humor and tokusatsu, Japanese style suitmation type vibes and battles, and it combines all the things that I love. I love comedy, I love dark humor, I love monsters, and I love those kinds of movies and TV shows. So falling in love with that movie, and then later meeting the director, and then less than like 6 months later having this guy in my collection because of just that chance meeting is something I never would have dreamed of. A lot of people, when they do licensed toys, immediately want to go for Ultraman or Godzilla or something like that, and that's cool. I'd love to do that as well. But being the first person to get a soft vinyl toy made of a character that was something close to me means a lot. And yeah, it also was produced and sculpted by dear friends of mine. And so yeah, it's just a lot of love went into this project, so it means a lot to me. I've been blogging for a while. I had various blogs. I had a blog about space and the moon for a while, and then when I moved here, I started a blog called Tokyo Toy Bastard. So this is my blog, Tokyo Toy Bastard. It's still there, and this is the very first article that I ever published, Tuesday, June 30th, 2015. Microman was a fucking badass. It was just a blog. It didn't have a YouTube channel attached to it. And the very first YouTube video I ever uploaded had nothing to do with toys. And the only reason I ever made the account was to upload this single video. And it was of the infamous Norwegian black metal band Mayhem singing Neverending Story at karaoke with me. So that was like the reason I started the YouTube channel, just to upload that video, because I had to share that with the world, and it's still there. If you go to my very first video, that's what you'll see. And then the second video I ever uploaded, I'm not sure if it's still there, was me showing my Gamera collection, because I'm actually a big Gamera fan. I have mentioned him once, but so for 5 or 6 years I had the Tokyo Toy Bastard channel, and I didn't really upload much, and I didn't take it all that seriously until around the pandemic. And I found more time to work on videos. And then a couple years ago, I made the decision to change the channel's name to Tokyo Toy Banzai, which I think is a little more family friendly, although it's still geared for adults. This year's been a little bit hectic because I've been dealing with health issues. Essentially, I contracted pneumonia back in August. I got over that, and then around my birthday, which was in September, I started having something else going on with my body, and I ended up in the emergency room. They diagnosed me with a nervous system dysfunction. It's called autonomic nervous system dysfunction, and I get these weird sensations in my limbs and in my head, and it makes me dizzy, gives me these kind of weird pressure headache things, and my feet and arms either go numb or are very painful. In my day job, I'm a kindergarten teacher, so I'm around kids, lots of kids all the time, and kids get sick. So fortunately, I've been in good health for the past decade while I've been a full-time teacher. But this year, one way or another, I ended up catching pneumonia. So I was out of commission for the entire month of August, and that bled into September. I started to feel better. I went back to work, worked for a couple of days, and something strange started happening to my body, literally the day before my 42nd birthday. And in Japan, there's actually a word that refers to like the cursed year of health for men, which is the age of 42. So it's kind of this weird thing that I didn't know about until after I'd gotten sick. But yeah, immediately after I recovered from pneumonia, I started having these weird sensations in my limbs, in my feet, and in my head, and I thought I was gonna die. And I went to the emergency room. They checked me. They were like, your heart's normal, you know, everything else seems normal. We can't do much else for you here. You'll have to go to a different hospital. So I went to multiple hospitals, and then after various tests, they discovered that I had a nervous system disorder, which can be brought upon by illness, stress, anxiety, all of those factors. Probably all of that into one is what caused this to happen. But yeah, it's little by little getting better. I've been feeling a lot better this week. But yeah, since August to October, pretty much out of commission. I wasn't able to make a lot of videos. I've been making a lot of videos from home, and there's been a lot of people that have been coming here to visit, and I haven't been able to meet any of them unless they've come to my house. So yeah, it's been kind of a difficult time, but I'm glad that I'm feeling better, and I'm looking forward to making more videos outside and meeting more people again, because that's really the driving factor in what I do. It's kind of wild, the stuff that I've been able to do since moving here. Working at a manga studio was like my dream, and then I discovered that working in a manga studio was not my dream. It was kind of hell, and I only did it for 2 years. And the entire time I was working, I actually had accumulated toys all around my desk. And the day I knew that it was time for me to leave the manga studio was when the sister of Hara Tetsuo, who worked at the company, came by and told me to put all of my toys away. So I was like, oh man, I can't display my toys at work anymore. And then yeah, shortly after that, I decided to quit. And for a short period, I moved back to the States, and that's kind of when I started to collect more toys. Once I got out of that manga mindset, because that was like originally my main goal was to work at the manga studio, but I never in a million years expected that I would end up like doing collaborations with Maru-san and you know, producing soft vinyl toys of some of my favorite movies. Yeah, I'm proud of what I've been able to accomplish so far. All the videos, all the people that I've interviewed and met. I'm proud of my kids. Like my son is following in my footsteps. My daughter is interested in filmmaking. So there's a lot of things I'm proud of. And I've still got goals that I haven't reached yet, but I've been very fortunate that a lot of the things I wanted to accomplish have happened in the last, just in the last 3 to 5 years. You can find me on Instagram at Tokyo Toy Bastard, or of course my YouTube channel, which you can find Tokyo Toy Banzai.